Really excited to be here with you all today who are thinking about applying for next year's class. We're eager to talk to you, answer your questions, and have a conversation. The agenda is a few quick introductions, and then I'll give you an overview of Leadership Tomorrow, the organization. We'll talk about the Flagship Program and a little bit about the application process. You'll get a chance to hear from some alums about their perspectives, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So right now, if you would mute your phones, please. I want to offer a chance for you to ask questions in the chat as we go along, but there'll also be a chance for you to unmute and ask them afterwards. And we are recording this section of the meeting so that if you miss it, if you miss part of it, want to read it again or listen to it again or send it on to somebody else who's interested, you'll be able to do that. All right. Well, starting at the beginning, Leadership Tomorrow's purpose is to cultivate, inspire, connect, and engage an effective community of leaders. For those of you who don't know, we've been around for 40 years, almost 40 years. And in that time, we've been fostering healthier and more resilient communities where leaders understand regional issues and opportunities, leverage the power of collaboration, and work to advance equity for all. We have almost 2,300 alums who are well-rounded leaders, influencers, decision makers in every corner of Puget Sound, who use their voice and position to advocate for systemic change. Our alumni are actively engaged in and with the community. When we talk to our alums about what benefits they get from LT, this is what they tell us: that they have a chance to enhance their leadership skills, that they better understand regional issues, that they deepen their community, and that they are better able to identify and dismantle systemic racism. So I want to touch just a little bit on each of these outcomes. When we talk about leadership and the focus on leadership skills in this program, it's not the traditional leadership skills that your organizations might offer, like delegation, supervision, management, public speaking. This is about civic leadership skills. And they are very transferable back to your organizations, but there's a distinction. These are skills like, how do you work in a group without an identified leader? How can you deeply listen to people with different perspectives? How can you better persuade and advocate for issues you care about? And how can you be a servant leader, a leader who is not in it for power, but wanting to effectively engage and empower others? This program will help you build those kinds of leadership skills, and you'll have ample opportunity to practice them in a low-risk, non-work environment. In addition to enhancing your leadership skills, you will better understand regional issues. We use the Seattle Foundation's framework for healthy community. It has 7 elements of a healthy community, everything from education to arts to environment, neighborhoods, health and wellness. And we spend a day on each of those issues, and then we look at how they're interconnected. So in the end, you will better understand the complexity and nuances of issues that you read about and the solutions that are necessary to address the challenges. And you'll never read a newspaper the same way again. So in addition to leadership skills and understanding regional issues, you'll build your community. There is a magic to LT, and the magic is the people. You meet people you would not know otherwise, who are talented and committed leaders, eager to be even more effective in their work. The opportunity to learn from each other and develop trusted relationships is an absolute highlight of this program. You spend 10 months talking about issues that matter with people who will be solving those issues in the future, if not now. And then you join a community of over 2,300 alumni who are leaders and influencers around Puget Sound. So finally, you build leadership skills, you understand regional issues, you build your community, and you are better able to identify and dismantle systemic racism. So we know, you know, that racial inequity and systemic racism impede our ability to create a healthy community for all. And as you learn about the 7 elements of a healthy community, you'll see that racial inequity is a key predictor of outcomes, whether we're talking about health and well-being, education, the economy, etc. Addressing and dismantling the systems that are barriers to a healthy community is the work of civic leaders, and that includes identifying and addressing systemic racism. We know too that people come into this program with different backgrounds, experiences, knowledge of privilege, equity, race, and racism, and that is fine. It's by design. We work hard to support people in their journey no matter where they are. Building the confidence and competence to identify and address racism is one of the most important aspects of this program. All right. So those are our outcomes. How do we design the learning opportunity? Well, I know you're all wondering if we're going to be virtual or in person next year, and the answer is yes. Our plan is to have the large group meetings, the retreats, and the challenge days, which happen once a month, be virtual. We've done that this year. It's had some huge benefits. We've had almost 100% attendance. We've had access to more speakers. We do miss, however, the opportunity to meet in person. And so as it's safe next year, we will look for opportunities in smaller groups to gather together, perhaps in site visits, lab team meetings, and other times we get together in smaller groups. And we'll be asking people their risk tolerance and allowing people to sort of choose those in-person gatherings to the degree to which they feel safe. So that's the plan for in-person and virtual next year. The way the year is structured, we start with an orientation in September, and that's an opportunity to meet your cohort, learn more about the program, and so we set the stage for doing racial equity work for the year. The fall retreat is 2 days in September. We go over some leadership frameworks, you establish your personal learning goals, and you begin to build your community of belonging. Then once a month, we have what we call challenge days. They're so focused on each of these 7 elements of a healthy community, and they include role plays, small group discussions, case studies, speakers, site visits. We do a lot of very creative things to engage people during those days. In February, we have a mid-year retreat that's focused on anti-racist leadership, and it's an opportunity to really deepen your understanding of and confidence in addressing racial inequities. Practicing courageous conversations, it's really one of the most memorable aspects of your LT year. Outside of these big gatherings, you'll be in a small group that we call a leadership lab. This is an opportunity for you to practice what you're learning. Work with other leaders. They can be your sounding board, your consulting group, and an opportunity to try some new things. And then finally, individual learning. There is work in between the challenge days. We do give a couple of hours of pre-work for each time we meet. And the idea there is to have everybody start with the same context and background so that when we come together as a group, we don't spend time just getting ourselves up to speed, but we actually spend our time together talking about solutions and ways to move forward. So finally, who's in the group? We're very, very careful and strategic about putting a class together that meets all kinds of different diverse demographic needs. Probably one of the most important is the sector demographics. You'll have a chance to learn from people from the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. And people tell us this is hugely valuable. We all need to get out of our lane, out of our bubble, and learn about things from different points of view. Also, the problems that our community faces, like homelessness, can't be solved by the government or the private sector alone. We all need to be working together to solve some of these bigger intractable problems. Diversity in terms of race, age, industry, geography are all part of what make this program special. All right, well, enough of hearing from me. Let me say a few words from somebody in this year's class so you can hear what they are getting out of this experience. And I'm going to read what Jason Eastman has to say. I'm learning what leadership means during a pandemic and an exhausting political climate. Instead of telling us to fit a particular mold, LT is giving us the tools and space to figure out what kind of leader we each want to be and what kind of leader our communities need. Megan's going to read the next one.
Hi, everyone. This is, am I on mute? Nope. Hi, everyone. This is Megan. Sorry, Carl, I'm still showing your video. This is Megan. I'm LT staff, and I'm going to read Pagina's testimonial here. I'm blown away by the breadth and depth of thoughts from my cohort. So often I hear cohort members share insights that I can't stop nodding to or that spark others to add value to the dialogue. All that is possible because of how much thought and care are put into planning each LT event. I'll turn it over to Carl now.
So hello, my name is Carl Bailey. I'm class of 14 and I am the chair of the Screening and Selection Committee. This has been an incredibly difficult year, COVID and otherwise. The bright light for me has been, or has and continues to be LT. It is truly life-changing, from connections to vulnerability, learning, intersections, multi-sector perspectives, live experiences, trust, being, anti-racism work, and growth, all components I wish to continue incorporating into my leadership journey, personally and professionally. That was from somebody else who was in the class this year as well. So to piggyback on what Sue has run through, the selection process is broken up into two sides, and that's going to, one, be the written application that is due April 5th at 5 p.m. Let me first say, before I describe anything else, don't wait until April 5th to get your application in. I'm sure you're very busy. I'm sure you have a lot going on. If you wait until April 5th, you are guaranteed to have some tech issue, travel issue, email issue, haircut issue that's going to keep you from getting your application in, and then you're going to feel some kind of way because you waited until the last minute to get this done. Go ahead and get it finished. If you turn it in early, there's no penalty for getting your application in early. In fact, we appreciate when your application is in earlier than 5 p.m. on April 5th. Your application counts for half of your overall score, so please take the time to thoroughly answer the questions that are on the application. The second half of your application, or the second half of your selection, is based on an interview that you will do via Zoom. Where you will be interviewed by some screening and selection committee members, and they will ask you a few questions. Sometimes those questions tie into what you have on the application, so it's definitely useful for you to have known what you wrote on your application when you go in for the interview. Can you go to the next slide for me, please, Megan? It's super important that you understand that the questions that you're answering are helping us to determine whether or not you are able to meet some of the leadership competencies that we are scoring your application and your interview on. And you can find what those competencies are on the website. Our website is a wealth of information that will appropriately prepare you for the interview as well as the application that you're going to complete. We also don't want somebody who is only willing to talk about these things theoretically. We want applicants who have a desire to improve the community they live in and want to get engaged in some civic fashion. So we want you to want to be a civic leader in this area, because we believe, if you're here during orientation, that you want this region to be better and you want to figure out how you can get involved in making this area a better place. Sue also mentioned that we spend a lot of time on creating a cohort that fits a wide range of diversity, whether it's sector, gender, race, location, age, all of those things. We want to have a variety of opinions because a diversity of thought is not a bad thing. And we want to create a space where you can be authentic and communicate what you think about a certain topic and bring your point of view to the discussion. I work in a finance silo, so everything that I do is typically centered around dollars. And so my point of view on how things get solved won't be the same as somebody who doesn't work in my industry. And it's super valuable to this organization and to you as a leader to really understand that everybody doesn't always have the same opinion. And so we want to get you in a room to figure out how to solve problems with people who don't have the same opinion that you do. Am I to turn it back over to Megan? I think you're going to go through a few more of the particulars.
Yep. Thanks, Carl. And thank you all for being here and for your interest in LT. We really appreciate it. I'm just going to share a few tips and recommendations that are going to help you apply. So before you begin your application, I first recommend taking a look at the LT'22 program schedule. So as you'll hear from alumni later in this program, going for LT can be a really impactful, life-changing experience if you have the time and capacity to commit and participate. So before you apply to LT, please take a look at the scheduled dates and make sure you will be able to engage and get the most out of the program. Please also take a look at our flagship program overview on our website. As Carl said, we've got a lot of information on there, and that'll help you kind of better understand the curriculum and what you'll experience as part of the program. And last but not least, as Carl mentioned, make sure to take a look at our target leadership competencies. So this long list of leadership competencies are the traits that we're looking for in our candidates, and it's how we'll evaluate your application and your interview. So next I'm going to talk about filling out the application. So once you've decided to apply, here are just a few tips to strengthen your application. So as part of the application, you will write 3 short essays, and there are multiple parts to each essay question. So to help you get a better score, make sure you're responding to every part of the question, and try to be as specific as possible. So often what separates a perfect score from a more average score is just the level of detail and specificity. So for example, when you're talking about how LT will help you with your growth, try to avoid generic phrases like to be a better leader. Try to unpack that as much as possible. So for example, why do you want to be a better leader? Is it to bring a specific skill set or expertise to your work so you can drive change? Or is it to get more involved in a particular area of interest? Try to really be as specific as possible. We also encourage you to be open and authentic. So part of the LT magic that Sue talked about is the level of openness and vulnerability that participants demonstrate. And this openness really does begin with the application. So your willingness to be open about yourself and your experiences, that demonstrates self-knowledge, which is actually one of the target leadership competencies that we're evaluating. And then finally, remember our questions don't have any hidden intentions. So the screening and selection committee isn't scoring you based on whether they agree with your perspective or the issue you've identified. They're scoring you based on how well you're demonstrating those target leadership competencies. And then just a few final reminders here. So as Carl said, applications are due April 5th before 5 p.m. It will shut off at 5, so that 5 p.m. is a hard stop. You can find the application link on our website on the apply page. There is a non-refundable $75 application fee, and if that is a barrier, feel free to reach out to me. And Carl said applications count for half of your overall score, so you want to make sure you devote enough time to the written application. Many of the interview questions build off of the application, so by devoting enough time to your application, that will actually help you prepare for your interview. We interview everyone who applies to LT. We don't screen anyone out based on their application. And financial aid is available if you work in the nonprofit or public sector, or if you are self-employed, not employed, or work for a small business. We do ask you to submit your financial aid request when you complete the application, but your request is completely confidential, and we don't actually even look at those requests until after the class is selected. And now I'm going to turn it over to Sue, who is going to introduce the alumni speakers.
Great, thanks. All right, well, as fascinating as Megan and I are, there's nothing to be hearing from people who've been through the program. So we're really lucky we get to hear from 3 alums and then a little bit more from Carl, who's chairing the process this year. So let's start with Brittney Jackson, who's in this year's class and has the most recent experience to share. Thanks for being here, Brittney.
Thank you so much for having me, Sue. And it's so wonderful to see all of your faces and all of the names on the screen. Thank you for your time and attention today. And yeah, even Sue, listening to you say like alumni perspectives, I'm like, no, I'm not an alumni yet. No, wait a minute. But yeah, I think that's just a testament to how much I'm truly enjoying my time in the program thus far, and really having, I think, truly a tremendous experience, even with all of the virtual toggling back and forth that we've had to do, and navigating that space, and how we've had to really find ways to create connection and find new ways to create connection and to create meaning. And a little while ago, I had the privilege of actually being able to connect with LT's board and talk and share more thoughts about my experience in the class this year and what that felt like to be virtual and to be navigating all these really big topics that LT's covering in a virtual space that require a level of vulnerability, that require a level of engagement and intention, and what that felt like. And I first didn't realize, in all transparency, because I never thought I would get it, I didn't realize how much I needed to see my white colleagues labor for racial justice and not work like meet a deliverable, meet a goal, like corporate synergy, like all those hashtag professional development things, but like labor, and to continuously engage and really show up over and over and over again to better understand. I needed to see that. I didn't realize how much I needed to see that. And LT gave me that, and I was able to actually witness that and go, okay, well then that means that I need to think about, okay, how can I show up in a vulnerable way? How can I show up in a vulnerable way that still honors all of the racial trauma that I have and I'm still currently navigating as a young Black woman and trying to take a leadership role and trying to navigate all these things? What does that mean for me to be vulnerable? What does it mean for me to take a step back from that superhero Black woman kind of ethos in so many ways? I've had to really be thoughtful and accountable to my own personal journey as a leader in this program. And that is what I think really, that probably isn't what initially drew me. What initially drew me was the regional aspect. I was fascinated by learning more about what's happening to my home. I was born and raised here, right? And how the city's been changing so far. I was like, I want to know what's happening to my home and why buildings are disappearing and why parts of our community are not there anymore. And how can I learn more about that? And I'm staying for all of these very real connections and learning how to be vulnerable in a new way, and learning to lean on each other is probably been the best thing I've learned so far. And how to choose people and relationships, actively choose people and relationships every single time we meet. That is truly what LT's been about so far. Like, I have to choose this. I have to choose to be vulnerable. I have to choose to engage. And that is incredibly challenging at times and totally tugs on my inner child. And I don't want to do it sometimes. I'm just like, no, I don't want to engage. And then I do, and I learn something, and it's actually been a really beautiful process. So shout out to this program, and I'm, again, so happy to be here and be in community with you all.
Thank you, Brittney. Always love listening to you and what you have to say. All right, Josh Heim, I'm going to call on you next. He's LT'18, so he's been a graduate for a couple of years and has a little more time to reflect on what he's gained. Josh.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's really good to see everyone. And hey, I just wanted to say that leveling up your civic leadership skills at this time is super brave, but I don't know about y'all, but I think it's just necessary. And at least for me, there isn't a day that goes by that my own leadership skills aren't tested. And I continually draw on the skills that I picked up and the relationships, more importantly, that I picked up during my time in LT. So my name is Joshua Heim. I'm the Deputy Director at For Culture, and we are King County's Cultural Development Authority. But that wasn't the case when I was in LT at the time. I was at a smaller city doing some similar work. And if I have to think about what was the biggest impact of LT on my life now, it's the fact that I had the opportunity, a very unique opportunity, to date my now current boss. And by date, I don't mean romantically, I mean professionally and in a leadership context. So, neither of us were working at the agency that neither of us were in the positions that we now are in. He was already at the agency. And, but because of LT, right, and all the labs and all the projects that you're doing, you are essentially working with 80 amazing colleagues, most of which aren't in your field, which is really exciting because, I picked up skills that I didn't know that I needed, and now I am, right? Like, you heard Carl say earlier that he's in finance. And so I see you, Carl, because I lead our finance committee, something I've never done before, but thanks to LT, I now have a cadre of folks who I can tap whenever I need to say, hey, guess what, guys, I have no idea what I'm doing. My budget just got shot by $6 million. What do I do? Which is actually what I'm dealing with right now. And so this is just to say that not only did I get to date my current boss, but I also got to date who is now a critical member of my finance committee. And so, and in fact, I think he was part of my first lab team. Indeed, great guy, Steve, out in Snohomish. And I will have to say, our paths would never have crossed if it weren't for LT. And so again, the curriculum is great. The projects are fantastic. The people who you get to meet and interview. And of course, it's all super organized well by Sue and Megan and Keiko and everyone else. But man, it's, you think it's, I don't know about y'all, but sitting at 8 hours in a room, or in this case on Zoom, maybe isn't your best idea of like what a fulfilling leadership experience is, but it will pay back in spades, guarantee it. So that was my experience.
Wow, thank you, Josh. This is just so great. I think I could just sit and listen to this all day. Really appreciate your thoughts and reflections. All right, Rob Saka, who's also from the class of LT'18 and has had some time to think about LT's meaning to his professional and personal life. Love to hear from you, Rob.
Thank you, Sue. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rob Saka. I'm a cybersecurity lawyer at Microsoft by day, and I wear many hats in addition to that in our shared community in a number of respects. And then also, I'm a proud father of 3 little kids, which of course means I don't sleep much, but thank goodness for coffee. So honored and excited to be here with everyone today virtually. And shout out to Josh, my fellow LT'18 classmate. It's good to share space with you, brother. So let's see, what did LT mean for me? You know, some of the experiences that I had. I don't know if I have anything to say like as profound or as impactful as Brittney or Josh, but I'll just say I'm super thankful that I had the opportunity to participate in the LT program. Josh talked a little bit about some of like the network and relationships and leadership journey that he was able to experience with many of his peers and classmates. I too have many of my own personal anecdotes about that. I'll share like from a slightly different angle, kind of some of the community building that I was able to do as a result, or I was able to be a part of, rather, as a result of my experiences in LT. I remember specifically we had Ron Sims, who is a former King County executive and official in the Obama administration. I think he was his official fancy title, Senate confirmed title. He was the Deputy Secretary of HUD. And I remember him coming to speak to one of our challenge days in our LT class. And he spoke for about an hour. I had known him before that, but after that we connected, and it was just great to hear. It was kind of unstructured, unfiltered, kind of candid conversation that I just really appreciated, and I know my classmates did too. But he shared some war stories about his time in civic leadership in various capacities, and just being able to hear his perspective was terrific. And I just remember like looking up to him, like someone who I've grown up with and idolized, in various capacities as being a successful Black leader, irrespective of like leader in civic government versus like nonprofit versus like the private sector where I work today. He was a leader, and so I just remember looking up to him, and then just like little did I know at the time, just a few short months later, I had the opportunity. I was appointed by the King County executive, Dale Constantine, to serve on this committee called the Charter Review Committee, and just this committee did sort of like the unsexy work of looking at the 50-page county charter document and making a number of recommendations about like potential updates. But I served on this committee alongside a number of other current, former leaders in various capacities. One of the co-chairs of that committee was Ron Sims, and so I had the opportunity to work very, very closely with Chair Sims in that capacity, learn from him even more on a more kind of detailed, nuanced, specific basis. And together, I got a chance also to put into practice some of those principles that I learned a lot in LT in terms of building communities, involving building an inclusive process, involving a diverse group of stakeholders, building consensus, which is important, and just various like rubber meets the road, like civic leadership things. And together, not just Ron and I, but the broader committee, we were able to help champion and pass a number of criminal justice reforms that were ultimately passed by voters of King County and its 2.2 million residents. And so like for me, that was a particularly profound experience. And I guess because good work maybe begets more work, opportunities. I was recently appointed to serve on the county districting committee, which is like a state and it's a parallel process to the state and federal efforts to redraw boundaries. But just being in that room and looking up to this person who I kind of idolize, and then like just months later having the opportunity to work alongside them. I'm wearing short sleeves today, but like rolling up our sleeves and just like get to work and doing the work when nobody's paying attention. And that is what distinguishes, in my view, like somebody who's actually committed to this journey and someone who is not, is like they're like, most of the times nobody's paying attention. Like a true leader wants to do the work and get their hands dirty when nobody's paying attention, nobody's covering what they're doing, nobody, like they're just in the weeds and they love it and they're passionate about it and they're doing it because they want to, it needs to get done and they want to be there doing it. And so but like having that opportunity just was really impactful for me. The following year, or that same year, my LT year, I ended up nominating Gurmai Zahale, who is now a King County Council member. I try to nominate at least one person every year. I don't know if I'll ever be able to top that. But and he ended up like bringing to life a lot of the like high level structural constitutional level reforms that we passed, at the county ordinance level. But yeah, I'm so honored to be a part of LT, and like, for me, bringing to life the construct of this servant leader, that in what I was just describing before is how I view a servant leader, is to this day and forever will be an impactful part of my own leadership journey. So thank you, everyone. And importantly, Sue, I'm so like, I was on this journey with our classmates, with community leaders who came and were very generous with their time. But also I was on the journey with you and your predecessor, Jan Levy, before you, and Megan, and the countless staff behind the scenes. And so I'm thankful for you all as well. So.
Wow, thanks, Rob. Well, I'm inspired. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for all you're doing in the world right now. All right, so Carl is LT'14. He's on our board. He chairs the selection process. He knows better than anyone how all of this works. So he's going to tell you a little bit about his experience and then just facilitate a Q&A. Feel free to put things in the chat, and Carl will also ask people to raise their hands.
Man, first things first, I told all of y'all when we started this conversation, don't come out here swinging home runs with these great stories about LT has positively impacted your life, and then have me try and close it out at the end with some humdrum speech about why I think you should join. And the first thing Rob does out of his mouth, Ron Sims, Guy Gerlet, blah, 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 all this stuff. Like, we talked about this. We specifically talked about this. You weren't supposed to do that. Oh my gosh. All right. And then also,
it was because I name dropped some of the people for illustration purposes only, but
listen, I'm name dropping that you talked to me and that got you in the group, and then you brought everybody else on board. So I'm name dropping at this point. And did y'all see that hashtag that Brittney did? I've never felt so out of touch watching her do that. That was well above my pay grade. Listen. All right. Anyway. All right. So for y'all, my experience with LT has been great. Like I mentioned before, it was an opportunity to be in a room with people who did not share my point of view. It was an opportunity to learn about what's going on in the region and figure out how everything is really connected. And it really emphasized the importance of cross-sector work. It's not just people in the private sector. It's not just people in nonprofits. It's not just people in the government. Everybody's got a point of view that they can bring to the party to try and help move this region forward effectively. Okay, so this is supposed to be the Q&A section. So while I'm giving you guys a little bit of backstory about me and why I'm involved in LT, feel welcome to click that chat box and type in some questions. There are a few of us that are looking at the chat so that we can see what questions are being asked. Please ask the general questions to everyone. If you direct them to any singular person and they get missed, then you're going to be upset at whoever you directed the questions to. So just direct it to everybody. Someone will see it and we'll address it. Okay. When I joined LT, I was told by a mentor of mine, this is a program that you need to be involved in. Figure it out. However you got to get in there, you need to get in there. And what I found in going through the program was I found lifelong friendships that I wasn't expecting. I found a network of people who were ready to jump in and help me both on a professional level as well as a personal level. And then I found other events and things that I wanted to get involved in that I probably wouldn't have thought about having gone through the program. This program takes work. Plain and simple. It's not something that you want to skate through to say that you did it. You want to, the verbiage that everyone uses is lean in. You get out of this what you put into it. So don't just show up and be a wallflower. Don't just check the box. Engage. Share your opinion. Get to know the other 80 ambitious people that are in your cohort, because everybody who makes it into the program wants this region to be better, and they are driven professionals who are trying to grow themselves as well as the region that they're in. So these are people that you want to get to know outside of just these Zoom meetings and your smaller groups. Build connections. As you continue to grow in your career, you want to be able to know that there are people who will support you in what you're doing. It may not always be monetarily, but it may be, hey, I need help doing this, or I need help talking through what this looks like. Can you help? Or you want someone who's going to take your call when you need their help. They're not just going to blow you off, right? So there was a great value that I found in this program, and not only just your actual cohort, but like the alumni too. Being able to be connected with individuals who have gone through this program in years past and hear their experiences of not even just the program or how they're getting involved and connected on a civic level is super duper important. And like Josh said, and I see you, finance, I see you, right? He mentioned that, you've got to get plugged in, and we need leaders. We need you. It is imperative that you figure out where you can get plugged in and engaged, because there's a lot going on that needs people who want this region and the world around them to be better. So I have wanted to stay involved in LT even after I got through the program. So I became a coach after I graduated. After that, I wanted to continue to stay involved, so I joined the Screening and Selection Committee as an interviewer, just so I could make sure that I was helping advance the program. And then I, by dumb luck, fell into this role that I'm in now. So I'm really just hoping to be a good steward of the Screening and Selection Committee while I'm running it, so that we can continue to bring in incredible people. Also, it's great to see all these newer LT folks that are still so excited about the program, which means that the work that we've been doing on the Screening and Selection Committee was pretty good. So I like seeing all these new heads that are so excited about the program. So that's really what I have. I wanted to take these last, hopefully 15 minutes and try and run through some of the questions that may have popped up in the chat. If you are on the phone and cannot actually type into the chat, then we'll likely try and leave the last 5 minutes for you guys to unmute and then jump in with questions. So let's jump in. Megan or Sue, if you see questions that you want to answer or ask, I will try and spread some of these questions around to the panelists as well. So I may call on you to answer some of these questions. Now that you're here with all this good vibes to share about LT, I'll have you answer some of these questions too, since y'all have so much to say. Let's see here. What do you got, Sue?
All right, I'll take the first one, which is a question about how do we determine what projects the class works on. We send out email to all the nonprofits through our alumni, through 501 Commons, which lists, I think, 500 or 600 nonprofits in the region, and we invite other people to forward those, asking them if they'd like to have a team work on a project. This year, we were asking for people who wanted a team to help them move their anti-racist efforts forward. So some years there's a theme to the request with the nonprofits, and then the teams choose the nonprofit that they want to work with, or they can come up with their own project. The next one, typical length of the program, it goes from September to June. There's a day a month, except for September and February, where there are 2-day retreats. And then how many hours a week? Gosh, Brittney, what do you think about that one?
Yeah, I was sitting and pondering that myself. Outside of the challenge days and the lab nights and some of the more structured ways that we engage, we really try to to balance, at least for our class, like the Zoom fatigue and being on a screen and being accessible in that way with how can we actually connect with folks and how can we maximize some of the time that we're spending together so that we get the most out of it. So we've had to think on our feet in different ways, but at least in terms of time, as a whole group, probably 4 or so hours. I could like average that we connect together each month as a group, but then individually or in our project spaces, that can be like a one-off hour here and there, or sometimes actually, as I've recently experienced in the last 2 weeks, just long engaging phone conversations with your lab team members. That's actually been something that's really helped us lately as we're in kind of the final stretches of our project that we're doing together and working together, and how, yeah, we can decrease some of the Zoom fatigue and just actually find ways to connect and just talk to each other. That's been really great lately.
So outside of the day, challenge day and retreats, your lab team chooses how often you want to meet. And I would say typically they're meeting every other week. Typically, and then there's the 2 or 3 hours of homework. What challenge day did you learn the most from, or was the most surprising? Open to anybody.
You know, in our year, we actually went to the Brightwater treatment facility out in Bothell. So that was quite the experience. I guess I have never been, and those things are massive. And so I think just getting a sense of how the region worked together to figure out how they wanted the plant to look, recognizing the growth that's been happening out in the Bothell area and how they needed to take care of that, recognizing the investment in that infrastructure that needed to happen, and being able to see it and how they were using that space as a learning environment as well, not even just for LT, but just so that the community could come in and learn more about what's going on, and then seeing the process literally from start to finish. Where it ends up that they're creating like manure and all this other stuff. It was great. It was really great to see that. And it felt like you felt like a super smart person in the room when you were trying to talk about how this related to like other major environmental events that were happening. We also covered what was going on with the seawall during our year and how the different sectors, economy, education, environment, all work together to create just this big project as well. So it was great.
Anyone else on a surprising thing from a challenge day?
Rob, do you have your hand up?
I have my hand up. Yeah, and let me lower it now. So like the most surprising like challenge day or the one that I learned the most from rather was the education challenge day. And I say that because, you know, back in the good old days of you know, in-person on-site visits and meetups, we had the opportunity well, I had the opportunity to go visit my old high school, my old alma mater, Kent Meridian, you know, with a group of 8 of my classmates or however many it was. And so, you know, that was one of the sort of case studies that we looked at. And I got a chance to go back to KM. I grew up in some low-income apartments just blocks away from a regional justice center in Kent, where, you know, a lot of my friends and peers and classmates would eventually do time. And some of them were sentenced by judges who are now my friends. And so having an opportunity to go back to the place that, you know, the community in terms of like high schools that built me, and see some of the kids today, KM was always like, you know, a diverse high school, but like seeing some of the data and seeing what that looked like today or 4 years ago or whatever it was, it like 4 years ago it was 18% white, meaning the rest is overwhelmingly people of color and immigrant refugee communities. And then I saw this one girl, I'll never forget, man, like this one Vail girl, like, you know, the principal, they huddle all the best and brightest up when outsiders come in, right? But this one Vail girl, she told me she wanted to go to Stanford University. And I'll tell you that brought a tear to my eye, because, you know, when I was growing up, that school at that time, like the best schools that people could sort of aspire to were mostly like in-state schools, and like UW, like the smartest kids were going to UW. And like, I'm a proud Husky myself, but no one was thinking about, you know, what else is out there and, you know, outside of Washington and outside of our region. And so like to see the journey that the school itself has gone on, where like this girl, with the lousy background and grew up just like me. She's thinking about these things, man. It was super profound and impactful. So education by far for me.
Super. Thanks, you guys. All right, our meeting times, events typically scheduled during business hours or in morning and evening. So challenge days are 9 to 5, retreats are 9 to 5. Second Thursday of every month is the challenge day. And then lab teams, the teams negotiate. So who's ever on your team, you guys come up with when you meet. Financial aid. Gosh, I don't really know what our average is. We try to give financial aid to everybody who needs it. We ask every participant to contribute something, so we never give the full amount. We always ask somebody to contribute something of their own. And often people will get something from their organizations as well. We also have a really flexible payment plan. So whatever amount is left to you to pay, we're really happy to work with you to come up with a way to pay it monthly or quarterly or whatever else. I would say, I think we typically say this, it's harder to get into LT than it is to get financial aid. We did not want to have that be a barrier, so we will make it work. How has the pandemic affected the way you implement your learnings? Brittney, you're probably the best one to speak to that.
Yeah, it was a really great question. In terms of the way it's affected all the things that I navigate, all it's done is magnify every single issue that that our sector previously had. And I realized that in my introduction, I didn't actually kind of position myself and share my my professional trajectory. So I am an assistant director of admission at a small liberal arts university in Tacoma, Washington, the University of Puget Sound. I'm the university's first multicultural admission coordinator. So it's my job to think about college access and scholarships and making sure that the liberal arts is sustainable and accessible to students in Washington State, which is why, Rob, I so appreciated your sentiment and what you shared, because I spend a lot of time, I recruit students specifically in Seattle, in South King County and Tacoma, and I spend a lot of time reading Camp Meridian applications. So yeah, shout out to Camp Meridian. But yeah, all it's done is magnify college access issues. And particularly having to rely on technology means that I can't see a lot of my students, and it's far harder to create the kind of high touch relationships that are necessary for getting first generation students, low income students, underrepresented students into college, and how important that is. So, but also in the virtual format that LT has, I can't reiterate how much I have to literally wake up every morning and choose to engage in every aspect of this program. And the dedicated staff that the LT is known for, I mean, they're incredible. That's why I put, Sue and Keiko and Megan, they're the GOAT, they're the greatest of all time, because their staff have really gone above and beyond to make sure that our class in particular feels held and feels seen and feels considered in all of the ways that we're engaging with the curriculum, and because of the pandemic. So if that means talking about our accessibility needs, if that means adjusting certain challenge days and the ways in which we connect and centering more racial caucusing time, that has been huge for our cohort. So the times that we're in our challenge days, having time to actually sit and debrief either with your lab team or in your racial caucuses or in your sector caucuses, like finding time to really build community, and also being totally open to and rolling with the class itself. And if there are any ideas that we have, I think the LT staff has been great in incorporating any ideas that that our class comes up with earlier on in the experience. A couple, Pegina and another class member of mine, Jordan, we all got together and we're like, hey, how do we stay connected? How do we get to know each other? And I introduced a concept that we do with freshman orientation on college campuses, which is called the warm fuzzies. And so after every challenge day, you write down like a little note or something that you can either make anonymous, like you don't have to put your name on it, but you make sure that you're clearly marking who the warm fuzzy is going to, and you just send someone a nice message. Like you put it we decided to do it on a Google Jamboard, and that feature in Google Suite, and then we shared our screens, and like in real time, you could watch folks from our class typing out just warm, thoughtful notes to each other, right? Like I really appreciate how you were vulnerable in that small group conversation. Hey, I would love to talk to you more about sustainability in this sector, and like what's your email address, and that was a pretty fierce and ferocious effort that I think has really paid off. It still means that like every day being virtual, we have to actively choose to be in community with one another. But watching my classmates and support us in rising to that challenge is what keeps me here.
Thanks, Brittney.
So I want to make sure that we are as respectful of everyone's time as possible. It's 12:54 right now. I see a question that I definitely want to speak to, but wanted to make sure that Sue had enough time to close out the meeting before we go, to let you guys have your day back. The question I see is, can you speak to balancing working full-time, fully participating, and being a parent of little ones? So when I went through the program, little Carl was not born yet. But I would argue that it is vitally important that you have an agreement with your significant other about the time commitment that's going to go into this work, right? We're still meeting virtually now, and as things open up across the region, you know, there will likely be some smaller group sessions. Because you want to engage with your cohort, it means that after the challenge day is done, there's still work to do. There's still research to do. They're still engaging and interacting with your cohort. There's still home life you got to take care of. So it's vitally important for you as a person who's interested in going through this program to have some type of an understanding with your significant other. Now, I'm sure you can not have an understanding, but boy, it sure makes it a lot easier to navigate this program if the person who you cohabitate with is on board with the work and the time that's going to go into this program. Don't surprise them with this, because there's hours involved with you being in these sessions, with you doing the work, with you doing the research, with you meeting with lab members and leaders and the groups that you work with in the future. Like, there's work that goes into this. So don't just throw this on them and suddenly say, hey, I've got this many hours a month that I'm just not going to be available. They should likely know that. So, but it's possible. It's just a lot of work.
Rob, do you want to add anything? Because I know you had little kids when you went through the program.
Yeah, I had two
full-time as a lawyer at Perkins Coie.
Yeah, I had two at the time, including one in diapers, and now I have three. Yeah, it's a significant challenge. I mean, plus one, everything Carl just mentioned. I ended up like to the full extent possible, although I wasn't always successful every single time and instance of this, but like, you know, like it's a time, like I try to lean in as much as possible. It was super time intensive, but I ended up taking like the brunt of you know, some of the time gaps were on me. And so like I still try to do like, you know, dinners and tucking my kid, reading my kids and things like that, and like all the other activities and hanging out with my wife and things like that. And you know, like when folks went to bed, that's, you know, putting in work, whether that means day job work or because I spent 10 hours, 12 hours, including a happy hour afterwards for a challenge day, or you know, just getting up to speed on some like the you know, meeting materials or something like. So like means I don't sleep a lot, like I mentioned at the beginning. So yeah, just having that shared understanding and alignment with your spouse, significant other, if you have one. You know, if you don't, obviously you have more flexibility there. But yeah, it's tough. It ain't easy, but that's why, like, as part of this process, like I would just encourage you to query, you know, like why you want to do this, like consider like and why you think now you're willing to invest in the time, effort, and energy required to do this right now.
Thank you. All right, it's time to say goodbye, but we are all available, especially Megan and I, for any further questions you have. We'll post this recording if you want to come back to any parts of it, and we hope you'll apply. We'd love to see your applications, and everyone who applies gets an interview, so perhaps we'll even get to see your faces. But thank you for being here, everyone. And thank you especially Brittney, Carl, and Rob for sharing your stories today too. Great to see you all.